We're going to take a few questions. We're running very short on time. So I'll start off with one question, and then we'll take one from the audience. And the first question I have is, I am fascinated by the sociological aspects of bridging art and technology, particularly in terms of generating administrative or financial support for your endeavors. And I'm wondering, based on your experiences, did you find challenges in pitching the art side of it to the technology crowd or the technology side of it to the art crowd? And if you did, how did you overcome those challenges? And can Elizabeth also answer? Okay, because I think she also started to touch on this same subject. Did she hear my question?
Yes, I did.
So I open it to, yeah.
Am I, sorry, there's a bit of a lag, so am I to answer now?
Please do.
Okay. So I didn't have much of a time pitching the art to the technologists. I'm really lucky in the group that I'm with. They're all on board immediately. But as far as funding, yes, pitching a game like this, because it's kind of out there, right? The concept is much tougher to art historians, right? And getting funding like that. And we haven't overcome that challenge at the moment. So we basically made this prototype with no money, just resources that we had in the lab. And so now we're in the process of trying to figure out how to fund it, whether that's from the public sector or from going to government organizations. So we're trying to figure that out. So any ideas or suggestions would be really most welcome.
For money.
Thank you. Other panelists?
Well, I could. My problem has always been to get a university, which is pretty tight-fisted, to support this kind of research, which I do, which is takes me all over the world. And the way I did that was at the same time provide value for clients, i.e. institutions which have no money. And the way I did that was through the curriculum. If I can provide, especially undergraduates, because that's where the money really is, if I can provide undergraduates an opportunity to do cutting edge original research for which may ultimately end up in publications, that's something that the university is very willing to pay for. And the publicity that comes with it is enormous. Retention, alumni are thrilled with that. So that's how I've sold it to the deans.
There's a major problem here, as I see it, is that to get funding from a National Science Foundation or other equivalents in other countries, one often needs to develop new methodologies. So, and of course, many of the things we do is much more a matter of application than of development of new methodologies. And that's much harder to fund. So we've been very fortunate to get the support of the Getty Foundation and the other funds in the nationals, in the Netherlands, such as the Giske Strijbers Fund. And we've been very pleased with that, but especially for the Ghent Altarpiece. But in cases where you can link projects like this to exhibitions, it's often easier to find funding because you already have the activity, the projected activity of the exhibition in place. But they're not very expensive projects in the big, in the big picture.
Yeah, I'm good.
Take another question from the audience.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to paraphrase and repeat the question for the video. And you were asking about connecting with the Zuckerbergs of the world and the commercial technology sector.
I've had some experience with Google. Obviously, they're involved in digitization. They're also interested in art. The problem with Google is that they, and I've been told by the folks there who are involved in imaging some manuscripts, they do nothing which will not. They fund nothing which won't ultimately make them money. They said that outright. As far as reaching, and I've tried. As far as reaching some of the larger, charities, there are many layers of middlemen, as it were, to get to them, and usually some of the larger foundations that they have, they don't really make their interests all that clear. Some do, but relatively few. So it's hard to get access. If you know people, that's great, but otherwise, I've found that it's very, very difficult.
Is it hard because they don't understand what you're talking about?
That has a lot to do with the ways of demonstrating the data. I mean, one of the things that I've been delighted to learn more about is making. I mean, it's one thing to talk to an academic and say, here's the challenge, this is the need, and this is what we can do, and here's the urgency. It's quite different when you reach people in a visceral way, and some of the data techniques for displaying data, that's where I certainly fall down. That's where some of my colleagues here really have developed some fascinating ways to do that, and perhaps that's the way to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Google Art Project. It's great. It's made a lot of really great images available to people at high resolution, where you can look at some very, talk about eye candy. There's a lot of great eye candy there. But in sort of talking with them about their ambitions, they want to do everything at scale, and that's often a bottleneck.
Elizabeth, did you want to comment on that?
Sure, we have had no luck, and I haven't really fully explored that avenue of asking wealthy donors. But I'm hoping that by raising the profile by these games that we might begin addressing that sort of thing by just raising public awareness. But as yet, we're not there yet. We're not there.
There's one thing I should also add, is that it really depends on what you're trying to rescue. People are it's much easier to find wealthy people who are interested in art and music. I've just started a project which is involved in recovering lost or unknown Baroque music from Dresden, which was damaged in the war. And there seems to be a lot more interest in that. If you can play, about 3 weeks ago, I finished imaging a new concerto by Telemann. People are interested in that. Some of the other, wonderful composers in that collection, like Heineken or Dittelsdorf, people don't really know about. But if it's a big name, if it's glitzy, they might do that. But really, manuscripts for most people, that doesn't excite them. Sadly. Not least exciting where it counts, which is in the pocket.
We're almost out of time. We'll take one more question. I'm sorry, to paraphrase the question, it's concerning digital preservation and the digital preservation of all your hard work.
It's a very important question. Thanks, Tony. I've been relatively successful in making it into somebody else's problem. No, and I say this with it's actually quite serious, because of course the institutions who are archiving these materials, they want to be involved earlier. When they take it over, when they'll take it on, they would like to be on board in the first floor and have a say in how you acquire things, and they will be, because of their nature, and I don't blame them for it, they will be conservative. They will say, do you really need that kind of resolution? Do you really need that kind of... So I don't want them there at the first floor. I want it to become their problem when I'm done with my project. And I've been quite, that's been working quite well. It's been taking a while. And as you might remember, that the Mondrian, we did a fantastic website on Mondrian. That's no longer available. We use Flash, and it's gone. It's a real. One of the things I want to get a PhD student involved in is to write the history of this kind of interactive approaches. We have this gap. We're going to have this gap of about, at least 2 decades, I'm afraid, that will be gone. If you want to write a serious historiography on this field, it's going to be. We better hurry up. And talk to people, because anyway, does it kind of help?
Other responses from the panelists?
Yeah, I mean, we're sort of kicking the problem down the road by really, over the last years, stripping back the complexity of interfaces we produce and really focus on how we preserve the data itself and make that perpetually accessible in known ways. So like, yeah, it's like we tore down our old building and put up a new one. We tore down a lot of our infrastructure to really focus on like the core building blocks that we know we can carry forward, and then start to layer on some of the interfaces, as with knowing that, you know, a lot of the stuff we people want to be evergreen or always accessible.
And there's also this intermediate solutions. For instance, when we're talking about these really high resolution stitched images, some of these images are almost 10 gig large. For astronomers, that doesn't mean a thing, right? That's tiny. For us, it is very large. What the question that I ask myself: do you need to keep per se these stitched images or the registered images? Isn't it just fine to keep all and to archive the individual images? Because I'm sure that stitching in 10 years' time or 20 years' time will be so much easier. You just throw them in a bucket and it will happen. So there's partial solutions to it as well.
RIT has a process of backing, you know, we save everything on servers and all the servers are backed up, and there's a whole protocol. But still that's problematic, and particularly for games. Games are extremely challenging for preservation, and I don't think that it's really been addressed yet. But of course, all of digital, which you guys have been talking about, you know, is hugely problematic. So yeah, it's a big worry for the future. For games, we haven't even touched it. Yeah.
I'm afraid we're going to have to end it there, but I do invite you all in the audience to join us outside at the reception, where we can continue this conversation and we can experience some of the technology that is on display. I would like to thank the speakers very much for that really fascinating glimpse into your work. I would like to thank the Digital Futures Consortium and Adam Kelly for organizing the event, and of course all of you for attending. Thank you very much.
Thank you.